The year is 2017, and I just recently finished the More Than Meets the Eye run, which still holds up, and I once again urge you to go read if you're interested. But anyways, while reading the series, Deathsaurus made an unexpected appearance by the latter half, and instead of being the evil, cruel Decepticon Emperor he was characterized as back in Victory, we saw here instead a compassionate leader who cared about his troops, so much so that he betrayed Megatron and the Decepticon cause, because he could never follow a leader who would only ever see their troops as nothing but cannon fodder. And when later asked to help terminate Megatron, Deathsaurus happily obliged and teamed up with two of the most bloodthirsty psychopaths in the IDW universe. Now, when I first saw this, I immediately fell in love with Deathsaurus' character and design. So like any normal Transformers fan, I rushed to look for a version of this character, and was immediately disappointed to see that the only versions available were the G1 and a BotCon exclusive, which looked meh. But upon searching a little deeper, I stumbled onto the TFW 2005 forums for one of the first times, and saw that none other than Mastermind Creations had been working on not just any Deathsaurus, but an IDW one. It's also a great time to point out that at this point in time, I didn't have any third-party figures, but I knew that once this Deathsaurus was going to be released,
I had to buy it.
Now fast forward to 2020 or 2021, I don't really remember because I'm getting old. But at this point in time, Planet X had already released their versions of Deathsaurus, which looked beautiful and tempting, not gonna lie. But I was hesitant because I knew MMC's version was gonna be the best. Then, when it looked like my patience was starting to run a bit thin, pre-orders finally go up at the height of the pandemic. And financially irresponsible me wasted no time in placing my pre-order, and my patience was rewarded. Because I'm your host Jib, and here this week after nearly 5 years is Mastermind Creations d-zef, otherwise known as Idw Deathsaurus. But like always, consider liking, subscribing, and commenting if you like what I do here. Thank you. Anyway, starting off with the painting and sculpting on the figure, this might genuinely be the best sculpt work on any MMC figure ever. And that's saying a lot if you've seen their other figures, as taking a closer look on the head reveals the subtle curvature of the facial structure, as well as the signature IDW style of an orgy of smaller shapes coming together to form a bigger shape, which isn't exclusive to the head but is more evident due to the color breakup. As most important of all is Deathsaurus' iconic bird crest on his forehead looking incredibly sharp, literally, and picked out in a beautiful metallic red, silver, and gold, which can also be found accenting the rest of his body, alongside a darker blue, pink, black, with even a little bit of a metallic blue. But the most impressive paintwork that my small beady eyes almost missed has to be the main matte blue finish seen across the entire figure. That doesn't even look like it's painted, but it is. Though I could be wrong, but MMC has done something like this on their other figures before, so it's not an idea I pulled directly out of my ass. Though my only nitpick with the paint/color scheme would have to be the main blue found everywhere is maybe a shade too light for me, but I can look past it because of how well all the colors complement one another. Cause considering how many colors there are, the balance is definitely appreciated, as they totally could have gone overboard, but they somehow hit that perfect middle ground. An aspect of the figure sculpt that really won me over in comparison to the Planet X were the legs, as they look so much more dynamic than the Planet X ones, at the cost of a little bit of parts forming, which we'll get into soon. But like the legs, the dynamic look is consistent throughout the entire figure, whether you're looking at him from the front, the sides, or even his back, because he's beautifully designed and engineered. But best of all, the figure is IDW accurate, more so than the Planet X in my opinion. As for his accessories, our Blue Emperor here has this beautifully painted sword with suspicious engravings and details right at the handle. Also this gun, which doesn't have a lick of paint on it, making it look cheap in comparison to the whole figure, which is a shame but still does look good in his hands. It also has this nice metal chain mace, which connects like that. And I think it might be because of the lack of paint, but the gun tabs into his palms better than the sword, because the sword goes in then immediately pops back out on both sides. And it would have pissed me off a lot more if the fingers hadn't been articulated and strong enough to keep the sword in place. But either way, this sucks ass and is a pain to my soul and my wallet. But hey, the sword has these thingies for storage, one specifically for the back, but the other for his shoulders, which look okay, as some way to connect it to the side skirts would have looked a lot better. Also, the gun stores on the shoulders if you like that. And if you didn't like the current face sculpt, you get a more serious face that doesn't look too drastically different from the one he already has on, but hey, options. He also has his tail that doubles up as a shield, and this just opens up and connects to the shoulders just like the gun, and I doubt I'll ever display him like this. Lastly, he has his iconic breast former buddy who's cleverly named Breast Tiger. Really breaking the creative bank with that one, huh? And not only is he beautifully painted like the rest of Deathsaurus, but he's also got some pretty wild articulation for his size. Cause he's got a hinge at the neck, opening jaw, and a ball joint double hinge and swivel on all 4 legs, with the back legs having an additional drop hinge sort of thing, with the tail moving up and down because of the transformations and the wings being on hinges. Cause I gotta hand it to the little titty bot. It can strike some good poses. It makes me feel kinda bad that I'm mainly gonna display him in his boob mode. But then I attach him back to Deathsaurus by the well-tolerant slots and pegs right there, and remember who the main show really is. Cause if you haven't noticed, despite being massive, Deathsaurus here can not only pose, but hold himself incredibly well while doing so. Cause he has an unlimited ball joint at the head, with the base panel having the ability to untab, giving him more down. Shoulders that aren't universals that go out that much on a soft hinge. Then ratcheted back and forth, though be careful, cause while the shoulders do lock in pretty well, they don't lock in where you'd expect them to. So even while I haven't seen or heard of breakages here, I, Caveman Jib, am telling you to be careful regardless. Anyways, bicep swivel. And also inside the shoulders move for some reason. A surprising more than 90-degree bend. Wrist swivel. Individually articulated fingers. An ab crunch with 2 D10s. Waist swivel. Ratcheted out, front, and back with the skirt section moving however you need it to. Thigh swivel. Ratcheted knee that bends that much. The feet are made out of die-cast, which might be a first for the reformatted line. And they can tilt and pivot, but because of the genius engineering, you can untab it, getting more of both tilt and pivot. And lastly, his wings are on a swivel, then a hinge on another hinge, with all the feather things being capable of hinging individually. Aside of the dubious shoulders, Deathsaurus here has some incredible articulation for a figure of his size. Speaking of size, how about some size comparisons? Cause here he is with Flame Toys Leo Prime, my custom Desperado, Planet X Starsaver, which he never met in the comics, but seeing how Deathsaurus was an actually pretty cool guy, and IDW Starsaver was well. IDW Starsaver, one can only imagine their interaction. Also, here he is with some friends Deathsaurus made along the way to kill Megatron, and they look great together. And lastly, some other of my IDW figures, which like, share, comment, and subscribe if you want to see me review them. Anyways, the transformation on Deathsaurus here is like any other MMC transformation, where it's actually fun and clever, with how the shoulders drop down only after being released by a button, with my favorite part by far being the legs opening up and compressing in a Combiner Wars type of way, with the feet adding some spice to the formula by hinging and swiveling a couple times before needing the tail to plug in, which is parts forming, but I'm a grown-ass man and I can handle a little bit of parts forming. Especially because the end result is so absolutely stupid yet badass that I love it. Because this giant robot space chicken ticks all the boxes to get the autism in my soul barking with joy. Because something I really appreciate about this mode is that not only are some of the strong joints from the robot mode transferred here, but we're also introduced to absolutely new points of articulation, like these cute little arms that have individually articulated fingers and are connected to a myriad of joints, as well as a neck that hinges and swivels at multiple points that, when put together with the arms, make this chicken mode just a bit more expressive than the robot mode, but it could just be me. Meanwhile, the tail does leave a lot to be desired, but it can still get a nice sway and up and down, but considering it parts forms, it honestly should have been a lot better, especially when in comparison to the Planet X version, which doesn't have to be removed and looks much more impressive than this. Just as much as I love this figure, I'll admit it, that the Planet X did the Beast mode more justice than MMC. Though, I do kinda like the Robot Space Chicken a bit more than the Robot Space Dragon, as MMC captured the goofy Gigan feeling of the G1 toy a lot better than Planet X, as they both offer different options, and if it sounds like I'm coping, that's because I kind of am. In conclusion, as far as the best Deathsaurus figure goes, this figure easily earns the title of best in my eyes, regardless of the minor nitpicks I pointed out along the way, as it's pretty apparent that MMC truly poured their absolute best into this figure, and it shows. Guys, if you're interested in this figure and can find him at a reasonable price, I totally recommend him. And with that, I'll be seeing you guys next week, because it looks like my grail is here. Thanks for watching.